The mop in Lennox Braith's hand wasn't half as dirty as the words floating through the glass walls of the boardroom. "No way Whitlock will make partner. They'll call us racists next if we don't hire some charity case." Lennox's grip tightened. His reflection stayed back at him from the polished floor, but he wasn't seeing himself. He was seeing his father's face, sweat-soaked, exhausted, hunched over legal files no one would credit him for. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not as a cleaner, not as a dropout. But this was where life had placed him after his father's tragic accident. The accident no one paid for, the lawsuit that never reached court. Lennox had paused his dreams to hold his family together. But tonight, the universe had handed him a crack in the wall. A folder, thick and embossed, was left open on the conference table. Lennox shouldn't have looked. But the red stamp screaming final draft didn't let him walk away. One glance, and his gut twisted. The figures didn't match. The clause had been flipped. A mistake that could sink millions, hidden under polished signatures. He could have walked past it. Like his father had walked past 100 injustices until it killed him. But Lennox wasn't his father. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the only pen he owned, and circled the clause with a neat line. He wrote no name. Just a correction. A whisper where no one expected a voice. By morning, the office was a battlefield. The partners were in uproar, furious, confused. Who had the audacity? It must be an outsider, someone sneered. One of the night rats. When Mr. Whitlock demanded answers, no one expected him to find Lennox mopping the lobby floor. "You did this." Whitlock's tone wasn't mocking. It was sharp. Focused. Lennox nodded. "I read it. It didn't add up. I thought you'd want it fixed." Silence. A kind of silence that felt louder than applause. Whitlock's lips twitched into a rare smile. "What's your name, son?" "Lennox Braith." "Drop that mop, Mr. Braith. You're working with me now." By Monday morning, Lennox Braith was no longer holding a mop. He was holding a stack of legal files, standing beside Whitlock as his newly appointed personal assistant. The office air changed. It wasn't the smell of polished floors anymore. It was the sharp scent of whispered insults. "He's just a cleaner. What does he know about law? Whitlock has lost his mind. He's pitying him." Lennox heard it all. Every muttered word behind coffee cups. Every sneer passed across desks. But he'd grown up in rooms colder than this. The noise didn't shake him. What did shake him, though, was the mountain of paperwork Whitlock handed him. "You said you wanted to be a lawyer, Lennox?" "Then read like one," Whitlock said, tossing him a legal textbook thicker than his hand. The nights became longer. Lennox would spend hours in the dim light of the break room, flipping pages, making notes, trying to stitch his paused education back together. He wasn't paid to do this, but he wasn't here for paychecks. He was here because his father never got justice. He was here because his mother deserved to see him in a suit, not a janitor's uniform. But the office wasn't ready to let him rise so easily. One afternoon, a senior associate named Caldwell cornered Lennox by the elevators. Caldwell had been gunning for the partner position Whitlock was holding open, and seeing Lennox beside him was salt in his wounds. "You think reading a few contracts makes you one of us?" Caldwell's smile was razor-thin. "You'll always be the cleaner, Braith. Even if they hand you a suit." Lennox didn't answer. Not because he didn't have words, but because words weren't enough anymore. He'd let his work answer for him. That answer came faster than expected. 2 weeks later, the firm was on the edge of a scandal. A major client's acquisition deal was falling apart, and no one could figure out why the numbers weren't balancing. Hours passed. Deadlines loomed. Caldwell and the associates scrambled, blaming in turns, blaming the client, blaming anyone but themselves. Lennox sat at his desk, quiet, flipping through the spreadsheets they'd all overlooked. "There's a hidden clause here," he muttered, scribbling on a notepad. "It's a trap." Whitlock overheard him. "What did you say, Braith?" Lennox stood, nerves gripping his chest. "The clause, Section 9.3. It binds the firm to liabilities after the acquisition. It's buried, but if it isn't flagged, the client will walk away, and we'll take the fall. Silence. Then, Whitlock snatched the papers from Lennox's hands and reviewed them with eyes sharper than steel. He turned to the partners, his voice low and cold. Braith just saved the firm from a disaster you all missed. The room froze. For the first time, Lennox saw respect flicker in the eyes that once mocked him. But respect wasn't loyalty. The storm had only begun. Later that evening, as Lennox packed up, Caldwell passed by with a crooked smile. Enjoy the spotlight while it lasts. People like you don't last long here. But as Caldwell's footsteps faded, Whitlock appeared by Lennox's side, resting a firm hand on his shoulder. Lennox, you've got a gift they can't bury. Keep reading. Keep learning. Your place here isn't up for debate. Lennox nodded, his throat tight. For the first time, he wasn't just fighting for his father's justice. He was fighting for his own. The office looked different now. Not because the walls had changed, but because Lennox Braith was no longer invisible. His name started to ripple across the firm, not as the janitor, but as the man who saved $1 million deal. Yet, every small success only painted a bigger target on his back. The whispers weren't enough for Caldwell anymore. He wanted Lennox out. It began with subtle sabotage. Files Lennox needed would disappear. Meeting times were changed without informing him. When he presented drafts, associates would cut him off, correcting him even when he was right. But Whitlock noticed. Every time Lennox stayed silent, every time he smiled through clenched teeth, Whitlock's jaw tightened. One afternoon, as the partners gathered for a crucial client pitch, Caldwell smirked as he handed Lennox a set of wrong documents minutes before the meeting. If Lennox presented them, it would be professional suicide. Lennox felt the trap snap. He could either stay quiet and let it happen, or flip the table. As Whitlock began his introduction, Lennox interrupted. His voice was calm but every word hit like a hammer. Before we proceed, there's an update regarding the client's legal position that isn't reflected in these documents. He held up the papers Caldwell had slipped him. I believe these are outdated. I have the correct drafts here. The room turned. Caldwell's smirk vanished. Whitlock's lips twitched into a knowing smile. Bring them forward, Braith. As Lennox walked to the head of the table, the weight of every mocking glance, every whispered insult, pressed against his back. But as he laid the correct documents down, he stood taller than he ever had. After the meeting, Caldwell cornered him. You've made a fool out of yourself, Braith. You think Whitlock will shield you forever. Lennox didn't flinch. I don't need shielding. I do my job. That's what they'll see. But what came next, Lennox didn't expect. The firm had a policy. Those pursuing legal education could apply for a sponsored scholarship if recommended by a partner. Only a few ever got it. Lennox had never even considered it. The next morning, Whitlock handed him an envelope. Lennox, you're not a cleaner. You're not just my assistant. You're a future lawyer. Finish what you started. Inside was his scholarship approval, signed off with Whitlock's personal recommendation. For a moment, Lennox's vision blurred. Years of watching his mother scrub floors, of hearing people snicker as they passed him, of shelving his own dreams because of the color of his skin and the size of his wallet, it all flooded back. But not everyone was clapping. Caldwell and his circle sneered, saying it was charity. That no cleaner should leapfrog over trained associates. But Lennox knew better now. That evening, as he packed his bag, Whitlock stood by the window, watching the city lights. You know why they hate you, Lennox? Whitlock asked without turning. It's not because you're a janitor. It's because they can't outwork you. They see it coming. You're not rising because of kindness. You're rising because you've earned it. Lennox felt it, deep. For the first time, he wasn't chasing approval. He was chasing purpose. But the final battle was yet to come. The weeks that followed felt like walking through a battlefield in a tailored suit. Lennox Braith was no longer the cleaner, no longer the invisible assistant. He was now the scholarship kid, the one they couldn't ignore but still refused to accept. Every task he completed was picked apart, every mistake, magnified. Caldwell's circle was relentless, but Lennox had learned to play a longer game. He buried himself in his studies after work, often sleeping just a few hours before returning to the office. Whitlock watched him carefully but offered no sympathy. Only opportunity. Then came the case that changed everything. It was a high-profile racial discrimination lawsuit against a powerful corporation. The firm saw it as messy, unprofitable. Caldwell openly mocked the idea of taking it on, saying the client couldn't even afford their consultation fee. But Lennox saw himself in the client. A young black entrepreneur who had been denied a business lease simply because of his skin color. Lennox didn't wait for permission. He gathered information, prepared a brief, and left it on Whitlock's desk. 2 days later, Whitlock handed it back with a post-it, "Lead the pitch." The boardroom was suffocating as Lennox stood in front of the senior partners and the client. Caldwell sat at the corner, arms folded, waiting for Lennox to trip. But Lennox didn't stammer. His voice was firm. He told the client's story, not in legal jargon, but in human words. He spoke of dignity, of being overlooked, of working twice as hard for half the recognition. He spoke of his mother, of every man and woman who had been told to know their place. The room fell silent, not from pity, but from realization. When Lennox finished, the client stood and shook his hand. "I don't need a firm. I need someone who gets it. You get it." The partners, even those who once ridiculed Lennox, couldn't deny what they saw. A natural, a leader, a lawyer in the making. After the client left, Caldwell couldn't hide his bitterness. "It's a pity, Braith. You're wasting yourself on charity cases." But this time, Lennox smiled. "You wouldn't understand. That's the difference between us." In the following months, Lennox became a force in the firm. He juggled his PA duties with court preparations and studies, steadily climbing. Not because anyone handed him a pass, but because he earned every inch. Years later, Lennox Braith graduated law school. The firm hosted a formal event in his honor. Caldwell was no longer with the firm. His old ways didn't fit in a world that had started to see value in change. As Lennox stood to give a speech, he caught Whitlock's proud gaze. He remembered the days of pushing mops and emptying trash bins, the sneers, the doubts. But he also remembered the moments when people chose to see him for his worth, not his circumstance. "Titles can be given," Lennox said to the crowd, "but respect is earned. Every day." The applause was deafening, but the real victory was not in the claps. It was in the quiet nods from those who once looked down on him. Lennox had rewritten his story. Not with rage, but with resilience. People often judge by what they see, but value lies beneath. Hard work and character will always rise, no matter how long it takes. Respect isn't given to noise. It follows those who persist in silence. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and stay with you.